Welcome to another episode of the Trivia Power Hour Gaming, the show where we look at gaming, secrets, Easter eggs, facts, and trivia you want to know about. If you know of any more trivia, or have a game, series, or developer you want me to cover, let me know in the comments, like the video, and consider subscribing. Also, make sure to stick around to the end for where I'll announce what we'll be looking at in the next episode. But, for now, let's get right into the trivia. Today, we'll be looking at the developer that made a name for themselves with their modern take on old school difficulty, From Software. Before developing their first game, Kingsfield, From Software was founded in the 1980s to create productivity software. Inspired by the Apple II port of the game Wizardry, FromSoft decided to begin developing games themselves. Their first project was a 3D action game focusing on robots exploring an underground maze, but development had to be stopped due to the game being too intensive for any PC to handle at the time. After Sony announced their PlayStation, From Software was able to redesign the project and successfully pitch the game to Sony for the upcoming system. Produced by Naotoshi Jin, who is also From Software's CEO, Kingsfield was developed in just under 6 months and only with a team of about 10 members. Released in Japan on December 16, 1994, Kingsfield came out just 13 days after the console was released. While it would never be officially released outside of Japan, in 2006, fans created their own translation for English speakers. The second and third Kingsfield games did get officially localized, however, but much like the Final Fantasy series, what should have been called Kingsfield 2 and 3 were renamed Kingsfield and Kingsfield 2 in the West to avoid some confusion. Meanwhile, Hidetake Miyazaki had studied and graduated from Keio University with a social science degree and found a job in account management for the US-based company Oracle Corporation after only a brief consideration at applying to game development studios. Unlike most kids in Japan, I didn't have a dream. I wasn't ambitious, Miyazaki said about himself in an interview. He was recommended a game by some friends to play called Ico that seemed to spark that dream within him. That game awoke me to the possibilities of the medium. I wanted to make one myself. However, at 29 years old, finding a suitable position at most developers was difficult, but one of the few who would accept him was From Software. After their trilogy of Kingsfield games, each releasing a year or less apart, From Software ramped up their development. Between 1999 and 2007, they released no less than 3 games per year, dropping to only 2 in 2008, but then coming back again with 4 more in 2009. They had branched out and started some new franchises, most notably the Armored Core series, as well as expanded into many other genres. So, when Miyazaki joined the team as a coder in 2004, he was set to work on the Armored Core series. The PS2 game Kingsfield 4, or Kingsfield the Ancient City as it was named in North America, included a number of fan names in the game. Before the game was released, a fan group under the name of the Verdite Inn would meet online to discuss the upcoming game. An SCII Entertainment employee, who was in charge of translation and localization of the game for the West, came across this group who had built their own fan storyline based on the 2 Kingsfield games that had been released thus far in the West. To acknowledge the support and dedication of these fans, many were put into the game loosely based on the role they played in their group. For example, the first shopkeeper the players meet in the game is named David Bunch, who is the real-life name of the administrator of the Verdite Inn, and only one of them who was told about the naming plan before release. Another NPC, Lee Maynor, is encountered near a giant spider, apparently wounded. Lee, the real person, often posted about his arachnophobia and thought that his portrayal in the game was fitting. Other examples of names derived from the community's usernames are Jamarak Neely, Durin Pathwarden, and Arx Angelos. Besides the Armored Core series, FromSoft also had a few other mech-style games, such as Frame Gride, Murakumo, and Metal Wolf Chaos. Until this month, thanks to Devolver Digital, of those titles, only Murakumo was released in the West, despite Metal Wolf Chaos being funded by Microsoft as an Xbox exclusive. The initial idea was to blend ideas from the East and West together, but at the same time do something different than the Armored Core series. We wanted to make something different. Because Xbox was from Microsoft, an American company, we wanted something that represented America, the game's producer Masanori Takeuchi said, later expanding on that idea by commenting on the main character being the president by stating, "Not only does he have the political power, but he's a character that represents the United States. I thought it was a funny idea for the president himself to be the main character." Apparently the team, being close to the Microsoft offices in Japan, would often walk over there to get feedback and input on the American culture and humor. Again, despite the original game never being released in the West, Michael Wilson, the president and main character of Metal Wolf Chaos, would make a cameo appearance in a later From Software game, Enchanted Arms. In the 360 version of the game, one golem is obviously meant to be the president, though his suit is called Executor instead of Metal Wolf. But he still cries out his iconic line, "Recharge!" Getting back to Miyazaki, after working on Armored Core for a number of years, he heard about the troubled development of the Demon's Souls project. Demon's Souls wasn't doing very well, Miyazaki said. The project had problems and the team had been unable to create a compelling prototype. But when I heard it was a fantasy action role-playing game, I was excited. I figured if I could find a way to take control of the game, I could turn it into anything I wanted. Best of all, if my ideas failed, nobody would care. It was already a failure. Despite all the work he did in changing the game, Demon's Souls had a terrible showing at the Tokyo Game Show just before its release, with many people reportedly not even getting past the demo's character creator. During its first week on sale, the game only sold around 20,000 copies. But, thanks to positive word of mouth, the game eventually reached 100,000 copies sold in Japan, prompting a full Western release. Despite the game already being notorious for its difficulty, some evidence uncovered in the game's code suggests that it could have been even more difficult. Something called a true death mode was found, though it is unknown whether this would be part of the main game or an altogether separate mode. What is known is that this mode would punish players who died in soul form by losing more than just their souls. But again, what exactly would be lost, being equipment, items, levels, or etc., is not really known. Another cryptic mechanic would have been the player being bound to a stone monolith after a true death. The Praise the Sun emote has become a kind of symbol of the Dark Souls community, for better or for worse. But the pose actually made its first appearance in Demon's Souls. While wearing the Ring of Sincere Prayer, the normal animation for casting miracles changes to the iconic pose. According to Miyazaki, the pose was almost cut entirely, stating, "When I presented the game to the rest of the company, I showed them that pose and one of the higher-ups told me it just wasn't cool enough. Of course, I told him I'd get rid of it, but I secretly kept it in the game." Ever since the Souls series exploded with popularity, gamers have been pretty vocal online about their desire for a remaster of Demon's Souls on modern hardware, but as of yet nothing has come of it. Miyazaki himself responded to these fan requests stating, "I've mentioned this before, but Sony Interactive Entertainment holds the rights to Demon's Souls, and Bandai Namco Entertainment holds the rights to Dark Souls. So, they call the shots on remasters and remakes, so I'm not in a position to comment specifically on it. As for the question of having an external team create a remaster or remake, I'm not opposed to this idea by any means. If such a scenario arose, I know that both Sony and Bandai Namco are mindful of the integrity of the respective titles, and I'm confident that each would put together a highly skilled team that would be an appropriate fit." The entire Souls series pays tribute to many inspirations. There are some that might be overlooked in favor of the more obvious, or tonally consistent ones. The Crystal Ring Shield attack, for example, was meant to be based off of Ultraman's Ultra Slash attack, though Miyazaki wasn't satisfied how it turned out due to the artist he was working with not fully understanding his vision. The first version of Kirk's Thorn armor was based on Hydra from the Saint Seiya Knights of the Zodiac manga. but due to a disagreement between Miyazaki and art designer Daisuke Stake, the design was changed to be based on the trial of 77 rings from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, only reimagining what the concept would look like if the rings were covered in thorns. When originally announced, Dark Souls was titled Dark Ring, but changed possibly out of fear of it being seen as an inappropriate euphemism. However, it seems that the team still liked the idea of that title, as their next game was announced to be Elden Ring. There is a hidden weapon in Dark Souls 2 in the chapel in Brightstone Cove. Beneath a group of mushrooms is a pickaxe weapon. To actually access it, the player must lead an undead boar all the way from the Royal Army campsite to that location, where it will dig it up. Alternatively, there is a 1 in 1,000 chance that a friendly piglet will spawn and follow the player. That's quite a bit of work either way for a reward that turns out to be a pretty bad weapon. Dark Souls 2 development was actually in a similar position to Demon's Souls. About halfway through, the director Tomohiro Shibuya was removed from the project and replaced by Yui Tanemura. He explains how this transition influenced how the game ultimately came together, stating, "We had to decide what to do with the designs and maps that had been created up to that point. Ideally, we'd start again from scratch, but of course we were under time constraints, so instead we had to figure out how to repurpose the designs in our newly reimagined game. This meant everything from deciding new roles for characters to finding ways to slot locations into the world map. This unusual development cycle faced us with an entirely different set of problems, and looking back on the project as a whole, it was at times arduous." Let's end with 2 short but sweet secrets in Bloodborne. There's an extremely rare drop that the player can get in the Chalice dungeons called the Ring of Betrothal. Its only use is to propose to Annalise, Queen of the Vilebloods, only for her to end up rejecting your proposal. Last, in the Hunter's Dream Workshop, one of the books is titled How to Pick Up Fair Maidens. Thanks for watching this episode of the Trivia Power Hour Gaming. I had to leave out a lot in this episode in particular, so let me know if you'd like a follow-up, or just feel free to post more cool stuff in the comments. Next episode, we'll be taking a look at the games made by Platinum, so subscribe to make sure you don't miss it. In the meantime, you can check out some of my other videos you may have missed, for even more gaming trivia I know you'll like.